set.
We'll pick up our voice and our
All right.
mic isn't working.
Yeah. Yep.
We are recording, and welcome to the Rutland Regional Planning Commission Board of Commissioners meeting today, Tuesday, April 21st. We're calling to order 7-11. And it might be hard to go through introductions. People here at the table know each other. I can't see the people named online.
I can
Hey,
see them.
Laura,
Okay.
if you want,
Right.
if you guys in the room want to introduce yourselves, then I can help introduce folks from online.
Okay, and Mary Kay can see them as well. All right, introductions. Karen, please start.
Yes, Karen Hill, staff. Stephanie Burke, staff.
Jack Schneider, Granton.
Maggie O'Brien, staff.
Robert Gibbs, Hubbardton.
Larry Purcell, Mendon. Craig Gilbert, Wells.
Laura Black, Shrewsbury.
Erica Berner, Wallingford. Anne Reed, Pittsburgh.
David Lair, Rutland City.
Mary Kay Scazza, staff.
Brian Spencer, Clarendon.
And online
Okay.
we have
Online, we
Devin, do-
have, yep, I can take care of it. That's okay if you guys can hear me.
Okay. Yep.
Devin Erie, Executive Director. We have Bob Kerback from IRA. Jessica Metcalf from Mount Holly. Abby Bradish and her beautiful little baby from Chittenden. Linda Linton from Pollitt. Barbara Thompson from Sudbury. Liz McKay from Castleton. Drea Stoddard from Danby. And Sarah Pelkey from Cedar. And also Demetrio from Rutland Town is the number on the screen. And that's all.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, first thing on the agenda is to approve tonight's agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? Thank you, Bronson. Thank you, Anne, for a second. All in favor of the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Hi.
So it's unanimous, agenda is approved. Moving on to approve the March 17th minutes. Bronson, motion by Bronson, second by David. All in favor to approve the minutes? Aye. Aye. Minutes are Stink. Okay, open to the public, and no public is here. So moving on to the financial report of February.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. So February financials were in the packet. The February P&L reflects a net income of roughly 83,000. The high net income is because we had our quarterly ACCD invoice in December. So that's the primary reason for the high net income. So we'll just look at the highlights of revenues and expenses on the P&L. Some of these you've heard at past meetings, but we'll just do a quick run through. Line 402, local income is high. Towns have paid their member dues. Line 417, U.S. Department of Labor is low, but will continue to increase as work ramps up with our sub-grantees, and that's for our Work 6 grant. Line 420, special products is low. Special projects is low. We're expecting this line to end under budget. MTAP, that was one of our projects that ended under budget, and we're expecting the TOD agreement to end under budget as well due to the limited scope. We also have shifted some of our project hours to the next fiscal year that can be shifted. A couple of projects where you will see the revenue increase through June would be CPRG and water quality A&R. That's our tactical basin planning. On the expense side, line 537, you've heard this before, but town and organizational support is high. However, thanks to Karen, she redeemed our credit card points and we received $800. And so that's reflected in miscellaneous income, which will offset this line. Line 550, rent and office improvements is high because there's already 9 months of rent captured in the system. And as you all know, the renovation to split one office into two was completed at the beginning of the fiscal year. At the end of this fiscal year, we'll go ahead and move that expense from the P&L to the balance sheet as the expense will be depreciated. Line 553A, grant disbursements, is high. The RPCs invoiced for their final 604B billing in December, and we closed that grant. Now we're into the next 604B agreement. Okay, so line 560 insurance is high. Of course, that's because we paid our insurance in full for the year. And you've heard this one before too, but line 565 equipment purchase is high as we did enter into that Dell lease agreement for all new laptops for staff. Our laptops just weren't lasting the lifespan of 5 years that we had projected. This way we can better budget this line. On the balance sheet, as previously reported at the last meeting, the key bank checking QUISP F, so that's the QUISP account, that account has decreased cash significantly, and that's because there's been a lot of activity, which is wonderful. And I just wanted to note that in March you will see that cash balance go up. We did receive $158,000 in March for payment from the state. Probably a little bit more information that you want to know, but so the way that the QUISP grant was structured at the beginning is we would get it was like a percentage, we'd get a large cash advance, right? So then we'd have to keep a lot of that on the balance sheet. Now going forward, they've restructured that. So any advances will be based on executed agreements for the project amounts. So I think that's a good move, and so we won't have those high cash balances just sitting there and maybe not being used for however long until the project's done. So accounts receivable, as of the end of February, accounts receivable totaled almost 417,000, and of that amount, about 7,700 is for the QUISP account to reimburse RRPC's operating account. And as of April 13th, accounts receivable totaled almost 134,000. So accounts receivables in good shape. I just wanted to mention a few things. Staff, we completed a cash flow and hours projections through the end of June, through June 30th, the end of our fiscal year, and the fiscal year is projected to end in the black. We have also submitted RRPC's FY27 indirect rate to VTrans. We're just waiting on an approval from them. And lastly, of course, staff is currently working on RRPC's FY27 budget. And that's my report.
Questions for Mary Kay? Hearing none, let's move on.
Let's read good job.
Thank you.
Executive Director's Report. Devin, you're up.
Thank you. Sorry I can't be there in person tonight, but also not sorry. I'm on vacation down in Rhode Island, so I will do my best to do this remotely. Hopefully all of you had a chance to review it ahead of time, so I won't be laboriously going through the report, but the big tickets. So number one is we have made some hirings. That was a really difficult process to undertake, and we've gone now nearly 4 months at limited capacity, being down 3 planners. So we're excited that 3 are going to be joining our team, 2 of which already have. So Will Austin, who was a board member and formerly assistant planner in Killington, is now joining the team for land use planning, mostly be working on town plans, bylaws, those sort of things. Will started a couple weeks ago. And then also Freddie Hayes. She was a town administrator in Highgate, and she's going to be taking over for Karima on workforce and economic development. And then finally, we were able to finally hire for Barbara's position to a natural resources planner role. And that planner won't be starting until about mid-May. So we will finally be fully staffed at that point. So everyone who had to sort of bear with us through that tough period, thank you so much for your patience. And I'm excited. We've got some real talent to bring in, and more capacity means more work with the town. So really exciting there. In that same vein, Stephanie's here tonight actually to help do some reporting out on the regional plan, but we're excited to announce that she has been promoted to planning director. It's a new position for us. Many other RPCs have this position. It's another way to help support our planning staff in some of our development of staff and project management as well. So working on the organization, not just in the organization. Thank you, Stephanie. Really excited about this. In addition to that, we do have some exciting trainings available, one of which was actually last week. So we're doing a 3-part training series with Mount Escutney and Two Rivers Ottaquechee Regional Planning Commissions. Those are really focused on just the essentials of planning and land use bylaws. So we held one last week. We had about 20 folks show up, 13 of which were from our region. So that was great. There's 2 more, May 21st and June 18th. I'm going to apologize to Judy right now because they're during her planning commission meeting. So I'm sorry. They are recorded and we will be sharing those out on our YouTube page. So hopefully more to come. We'd like to now with this new staff, continue to offer more trainings, especially to planning commission members in towns. There's another webinar coming up on the Flood Safety Act. Folks probably remember that's statewide river corridors and some other elements that was enacted in 2024. There's a group of folks organizing these regional webinars. We're just trying to give folks as much information as they can. We're several years out before that is implemented. In addition, I was nominated and accepted a role on the NATO board, so National Association of Development Organizations. Really exciting opportunity. There's 3 other RPC directors that represent Vermont on that board. It's a really good chance to know about new federal opportunities early and hopefully capture those opportunities for the Rutland region. So more to come. I'll be reporting out from that experience once we get into it. We have not had our first meeting yet. Couple Act 181, Act 250 items. The first one is this road construction jurisdictional guidance. That is still underway, even though things are slowing down, because really the next piece of my report is more important, which is Act 181 amendments. So Senate Bill 325 is looking to amend Act 181 and do a couple really important key things like delay or now looks like repeal the road rule and tier 3 critical natural resources in the new Act 181 framework. These would be pretty substantial revisions that I think would address most of the issues that we have been hearing from our regional planning and future land use mapping work. So hopefully that comes as a big relief to folks in our rural region. There are some other elements of this bill that are important, one of which is streamlining our amendment process. So if we do have small changes to our map, or for instance, we have a couple communities that are not currently eligible for Tier 1B, but will be, that will give us an option to make those amendments to our map and not go through a lengthy 6-month-long adoption process. So saving time and money ultimately and getting communities benefits faster. So lastly is actually a good launch and introduction for Maggie tonight. So Maggie, our emergency management planner, has been working with Eric Pulver from the Department of Health on standing up a COAD known as the Rutland Regional Disaster Cooperative. And through that effort, because we still do not have federal FEMA funds to support this program, recently we applied to the Land Access and Opportunity Board. Maggie and Eric prepared that application to fund this ongoing work in the absence of our federal funds. So we're excited to hear the news, and hopefully we'll hear soon about whether we got that funding. But this is just another way in which we're trying to address a real need in the region and looking for outside the box ideas to fund those really critical planning efforts. So that's why I wanted to bring Maggie tonight to report out and give an update to all of you on the great work she and Eric are doing. So before I kick it off to Maggie, are there any questions? That was quite a few things to buzz through tonight.
Devin, this is Brian Spencer. I do have one question.
Yeah, Brian.
Your prediction as to what's going to happen with the road rule and the tier 3 business. Is it going to be postponed, repealed, or is it going to stay as it is? What's your prediction?
My prediction, and I believe this to, I would wager money on it, is that we will see a full repeal of those two provisions. Both committee chairs have indicated that they would support that repeal of the road rule in tier 3. So I think that's a major step. Obviously, you can't count your chickens until they roost, so we don't know. But given the rhetoric and the movement of this bill in the legislature, I think repeal is the only option for folks. So whether that happens or not, we will see. But I believe it is likely.
Thank you.
So, Devin,
There is a God.
Yeah, Barbara.
so I just have a quick question on this June 18th land use training. We've got 4 out of 7 newly elected members of our planning commission here in Sudbury. And would that benefit them? Is that the sort of thing? Yes?
Absolutely. And we actually, yes, and we actually had 2 members of the Sudbury Planning Commission join our last meeting.
Yeah, I
or
know.
last training last week.
I think you
So,
had
yeah,
more than 2.
Yeah, any members, whether they've been doing it a long time and need a refresher, or are new and looking to better understand the planning frameworks, then yes, super valuable.
I didn't see the location for in-person. I did see that it is remote, but
All 3 we are offering in person at our office.
okay, at the office. Or where can I get the information on how they can join remotely?
I can share it with all the commissioners, but it was sent out and is on our Facebook and website as well.
Okay, I can check the website. I'm not on Facebook. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. All right, let's turn it over to Maggie.
Questions for Devin before I turn it over to
Sorry.
Maggie. Next
Back
agenda.
to chair.
Thank you, Devin.
So nice, you gotta say it
Thank
twice.
you. Please roll on.
Yeah, so I will just share my screen really quick. I just have a few slides I want to walk through.
Maybe, hopefully Maggie.
Maybe.
It didn't work last time, so.
Oh, no.
We are seeing it online.
Oh, you're seeing it online? All right. Well, I do have copies of the slides, but I have copies of the associated materials. So that's all right. We'll make it work.
Okay.
Yeah, so
There you go.
oh, maybe.
I don't think it's gonna work. I don't think it's gonna work.
Okay. Well, so sake of formalities, I'm Maggie O'Brien. I am typically the emergency management planner for the Rutland Regional Planning Commission and the Rutland region at large. And the reason why I say typically is because, as Devin alluded to, we do not have our typical emergency management program funding. We have not since the end of the federal fiscal year, September of 25. So a big challenge for me has been trying to keep the core vital components of the program alive while also expanding our self-sufficiency in other areas. So what I'm about to introduce to you folks tonight is actually something that's been in the works for several years, long before we knew about the federal funding shortfall. So picture after the floods of 23, we had a couple of hard hit towns like Killington, Shrewsbury, mostly the towns along the Green Mountain Spine and right next to it. But many of our towns saw nothing at all. And it was one of those situations where, unlike Washington County or the Northeast Kingdom, there wasn't a real sense of urgency, let's say, to stand up what are called long-term recovery groups. So various organizations that come together to help with unmet needs, whether that be people who are still displaced several months after a disaster, or something of that nature. And so one never cropped up in Rutland. And so Eric Pulver, who I work with, he is the emergency preparedness specialist for the Rutland area and VDH. We have a pretty close-knit working relationship. He and I were both of the same mindset that it's not a matter of if, but when. So granted, I don't know if we'll ever get us hit as hard as Washington County, but I think recognizing the era that we're in and seeing that storms are more frequent, are more intense, are more prolonged, we would be much better off getting a structure in place now to figure out how to deal with those eventualities instead of having to react in the moment during a prolonged event like 23 that was like 3 weeks of on and off constantly just being on the pulse of everything, and it was exhausting. So having all these things from the start would be wonderful for us. So thinking in that broader context, so as I mentioned, frequency and intensity of severe storms is causing major damage to homes, buildings, and infrastructure. All of that is going to become more common. In Vermont, we don't have county government. We pride ourselves on that in many ways, but there's also some inherent weaknesses to this model. So there are 240 something towns constantly buying for the same resources from the state. And if you have a situation where Washington County is really hard hit, Northeast Kingdom is really hard hit, the few towns that got hit really hard in Rutland might not get any of those. So what do you do then? Those needs are still pressing for those communities. And the state itself can be stretched thin in cases like that. Or as we're seeing now with the lack of federal funding and assistance, we might not even get that help anymore. We're not sure. We also have the demographic trends where we have, Vermont is an aging population. So folks are starting to retire and move on with their lives. We have limited finances. Our tax bases aren't as robust as Chittenden County, certainly. And our resources for our smaller rural towns means that it's harder for people to step outside of their roles to think about preparing for emergency situations. We're always dealing with what is immediately urgent for our budget and for what our town is dealing with. And then it's easy for those emergencies to kind of get lost. So with all of that in mind, that means it's harder for us to prepare, to respond, to recover, and to mitigate, which is essentially the whole spectrum of emergency management and what it's for. So Eric and I had a couple of key questions that we hammered out with a group of stakeholders, primarily emergency management directors, thinking about what are some of the key questions we want to address that are currently gaps. So it's understanding what do towns need resource-wise, both in preparing for and responding to recovering from a disaster. How can those needs be met? And when do we provide the resources to meet those needs? So enter the idea for the COED, the Community Organizations Active in Disaster, and I really wish my slides were working right now, but I do have a flyer with this graphic on it if you're interested. So the Rutland Regional Disaster Cooperative, as it's called. So this is something that mostly exists in name only at the moment. We do have bylaws. Eric Pulver is the chair. But as it turns out, if you didn't get majorly impacted in a disaster, you're not on the favorable end for receiving funding after the fact. So we don't have any funding to back up the RRPC itself. So in the meantime, we're working on the town leg of the stool to prop that up. But the whole idea of the RRPC is that it's a coalition of organizations, everything from nonprofits, faith-based organizations, local businesses, community-based organizations, coalitions, everything in between, all coming together in a forum and essentially working together, communicating, collaborating, cooperating to minimize the duplication of resources and efforts, making sure that if we have towns that are harder hit, that they can get the resources they need from within the region. Of course, assuming that the towns that are offering the help are stabilized first. So really, it's meant to be a strategic network to enhance capacity for disaster mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. So this is more of almost a centralized regional model that we're trying to build out. And so the whole idea being that we can share manpower, resources, and knowledge all within a centralized forum, so people have one place to go. That is not the state, because as wonderful as the state is for some things, towns know to go to their more regional oriented staff first to help meet those needs, and that's what we're trying to do with this. So how do we ensure that we can build this sort of network? Well, for us, we envisioned it as a 3-step process. So step 1 being we need to understand what the common trends and needs are for our towns when a disaster happens. Obviously, if we can pin down some priorities, if a lot of towns are saying that they need help with the delivery of food for mass feeding or for cots or materials for shelters, then that gives us an idea of who we can start to approach. So step 2, based on those identified needs, identify the organizations that can help fill those gaps. And then step 3, create that direct linkage between town needs and organization resources. So this is a several-year process. We had several months of groundwork, first of all, to build out this framework. A lot of weekly meetings, a lot of brainstorming, a lot of tweaking. And then step 1, we launched in June of last year. And I'll get more into what exactly step 1 entails in a bit, but we're still going actually with step 1. And in fact, October is our projected end date for our last discussion as part of step 1. So it's a multi-year process. It's not something that happens overnight. But we do have the momentum to keep it going. So that's the good news I can deliver. But this step 1, what do I mean by step 1 and understanding the town needs? Well, it essentially means we need a regional needs assessment. So we know that towns often struggle with access to essential emergency response resources in various ways. And so if we can coordinate with those so-called sector organizations that I mentioned earlier, all those different groups, then that'll be a critical way to help us fill some of those gaps. So again, knowing those needs will help shape which organizations and which sectors may be involved in different phases of the emergency management cycle. So once we have those common trends and needs pinned down, we approach those organizations, like go back to the food distribution example I gave earlier. We go to Shaw's, we go to Price Chopper, we go to Hanover's, we go to even maybe local stores that folks depend on, like Pierce's store in Shrewsbury or wherever. And we ask those organizations, okay, so a lot of our towns need help with being able to feed people during a mass event. So, what services can you provide to help support our towns during these emergencies? Now, there's a lot of informal agreements that exist, but they are not captured in writing. And so there is a risk of that being lost as people move on, or new people come in, they don't know the protocol. So that's one of the trends we've noticed. But then once we have those initial conversations and we know which players are willing to step up to the plate to help in this area, then we can start to create that direct linkage through formal agreements, through a more centralized framework. Quarterly meetings with the COAD could finally start up. And so that would be what provides our framework for municipal support. So as this idea evolved, we originally created what we called sub-regional groupings. And so the idea was that we need to conduct an exercise to ask those common questions about, okay, here's a disaster that's coming. How are you preparing? How are you responding? What does the immediate aftermath look like and what needs are still unaddressed? But having one exercise for 27 towns is obviously way too unwieldy. So we initially broke up the region into 7 sub-regions, or 6, sorry, excuse me. And so these groupings were not done in a vacuum and they were not random. I tried to, and again, I wish I had my slides working. The groupings were based on towns that have good existing relationships with each other based on proximity, and based on, how towns already interact with each other, so that neighbors helping neighbors type of idea. And so, I will say they're not perfect. I think everyone has different opinions on which towns work best with each other. And we also have, border towns like Pollitt, they often go over to Granville, New York. It's kind of hard to pull New York into this network. Or we have Sudbury, they typically go to Addison County. So it's not perfect. We are confined within the county lines. And it's about 4 to 6 municipalities per grouping, so there was a balance aspect to it as well. But after some feedback with some of our folks in our regional emergency management committee, we have these pilot groupings where we've been conducting these exercises. Another key component that we had in making these groupings was having what we called a community champion. So there are certain municipalities who have the capacity, the manpower, or quite frankly, the volunteers who are just passionate about this work. That means that their town is ahead of the game when it comes to emergency management. Chittenden comes to mind, Brandon comes to mind, Pollock comes to mind, just to name a few. And so if we could ensure we had at least one community champion in each sub-region grouping, then we would have someone who could serve as an anchor to help motivate the other towns, encourage them to get more involved, and make sure that we have someone who can promote those resources and those communication sharing when the time comes to fully prop up the net. So this is really a long-term vision where initially we were just creating these for the exercises, but maybe these subregions become permanent. The boundaries aren't fixed by any means at the moment. Like I said, they're not perfect, but maybe these subregions could serve as a way to provide centralized support within areas of the region, and having that blend of grassroots assistance and, as I mentioned, neighbors helping neighbors. So ooh. Sorry about that. I unmuted myself. Oh. Okay, what about now? Okay. Sorry about that, folks. All you have to do is hit a space bar and that throws off your whole group. So get back to it. All right. So for the regional needs assessment, the way we've done it, we've had a facilitated discussion / mini tabletop about 3 hours or so, where we have a scenario similar to the flooding of 23, and we asked through different stages what towns are doing. So the first 2 modules is really looking at establishing the basics. So looking at having a regional partner for food and water security, shelter locations, the storage for basic needs, hygiene equipment, that sort of thing. And also looking at, is the town able to stand up an emergency operations center? Is the town able to identify the contacts at the regional and state level that they can tap into to help support their residents? And then module 3, which is actually something that came out of the first pilot discussion, is having the towns come together to talk to each other instead of just talking within themselves to know what their needs are, but to talk about opportunities to help each other or just share, like, what are some of the common needs or concerns and how could other towns help support, potentially meeting those needs. So 3 of these discussions have been held so far. So first we have the Northeast subregion. So that was Chittenden, Killington, Pittsford, Brandon. We also had Mendon in that group, but for whatever reason, the folks in Mendon couldn't show up that day, so we kind of shuttled them into another group for at least step 1 of my 3-step strategy. And that went fairly well. That was where we got the feedback that towns should talk to each other more, and that's exactly what we're trying to promote. So we're like, yeah, makes sense. Let's roll that into this. So that was in June of 25. In October of 25, we had the Northwest subregion. So that was Sudbury, Benson, West Haven, Fairhaven, Hubbardton, Castleton, a bit on the larger side. And then in February of this year, we had the Southeast subregion. So that was Wallingford, Clarendon, Mount Holly, Shrewsbury, and one other I'm blanking on at the moment, Tinmouth. And I'm proud to say that of the 16 or so towns that we've involved so far, every single one of them except one had at least one person show up, which is huge in our minds. We were thinking that, we'd be lucky enough to get 16 towns total to show up at once we went through the whole cycle. But we really have people who understand what the needs, like why we're doing this, and like it's not just an exercise for the sake of an exercise, it's part of a larger like research and coalition building thing. So that's been incredibly helpful for us to have towns understand why we're doing this. So based on those three discussions, what have we found so far? Well, shockingly, or maybe not shockingly, a lot of the trends are the same across the board. So we need more formal standardized documentation like memorandums of understanding, standard operating procedures, aid agreements. Without having these things on paper, take it from me as someone who had to take the torch from local hazard mitigation plans from Stephanie. It can be very hard to wrap your arms around what to do if you've never been in the situation before. So as a result, there's tends to be a natural inclination for, there's towns become highly vulnerable to losing institutional knowledge. And that's something we see down the road in 5 to 10 years. And that's going to be a serious problem. So we need to get ahead of that. There's also more need for communication and coordination of resources. Sometimes within towns, you have one or two people who do everything and everyone else just kind of follows. And it needs to be a more mutually supportive relationship, or even just between towns. A lot of towns are isolated. They don't know what's going on during a major flooding event if they're not impacted as much. And then other common challenges, things like capacity for standing up emergency operations center. So you have the emergency management directors are often town managers, fire chiefs, police chiefs. They already got other jobs they're doing. They're already on the ground responding, which means that people don't formally stand up EOCs. They just do what they have to do in the moment, which is great. That's one of the things we're known for, but it also means that again, knowledge stays with people. It's not something that can be reimbursed by FEMA, for instance. So if you don't formally open an EOC, you've just lost your chance to get FEMA reimbursement and public assistance help. So just one example. And then other barriers to communication. So we know that cellular service isn't uniform, radio we have a lot of issues with, and identifying locations and means to stage resources. There's some potential areas, but it's in a floodplain, or it's not easily accessible by road. So what do you do then? So those are some of the common trends that we've been seeing, and I noticed a lot of these in our after action reports that we put together and share with the committee afterwards. And I distilled it all into a summarized form because I'm like, these are long after action reports. I don't want to go through a 30-page packet. So I do have those findings if you're interested in reading more about what we found in each of these exercises. We do have reports for the first 3 discussions so far. And so next steps for what we're doing here. So we're going to finish the rest of the discussions with our municipality. So we have 3 more to go. Next is the Southwest subregion. That's actually happening in a couple of weeks on May 6th. And then we have the South, so Paulet, Danby, Mount Tabor. That'll be happening in July. And then last but not least, we'll have what we've called the Central region, which is Rutland Town, Rutland City, West Rutland, Proctor, and now we're going to try to throw Mendon into the mix too. So that's going to be a big one. And I hope you, Dave, or Tom Donahue, the mayor, or at the very least, Beloved will be there to walk us through this, because the city will be a big player in that one. So that last discussion will be in October. And then once we've had a chance to examine all the data, synthesize all those trends and needs, we'll start approaching those sector organizations in the winter of 27. And then, of course, that endpoint being a larger conversation between towns and organizations and starting to coordinate those. So we still got a long way to go, but we have the momentum to keep it going. We have the backing of both my fellow emergency management planners. Our BEM regional coordinator, Bill Jones, has been helping us throughout this effort. And of course, getting the full backing from Devin has been a huge help in allowing me to use state funds to keep this effort alive. So like he mentioned, Eric and I recently applied to the Community Resiliency Hub grant from the Land Access and Opportunity Board, hoping that can help fund a lot of this coalition building that, honestly, much of which wouldn't have been funded under EMPG anyway. So we'll hear in about mid-May or so whether we receive that grant or not. Chances are looking good, but we'll see. And even if we don't, then we'll do our best to keep this alive, keep the momentum we have going. And so, yeah, that's about all I have. My only other thing is that if you are interested in attending one of these exercises, and if you haven't already, I know a few people in the room have potentially. So like I said, the next one is on May 6th. It is during the middle of the day because it's a 3-hour exercise, and we figured people aren't going to want to come to one in the evening at the end of a long work day. So we do understand that some people have jobs in the middle of the day, so I try to give plenty of notice and get people to rearrange their schedules if they're able to do so. So it's at the Poultney Firehouse, May 6th, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. I have, if you want to join, just let me know. I have information I can send out. I can have Devin send out that you can fill out the RSVP form so we can ensure we have enough packets and food for folks. If you're not part of the towns in that sub-region, you'd most likely be an observer, which means you just kind of float around. You hear what the towns are talking about. You get some ideas for what we're trying to do. And you'll get to meet my partner, Eric, who this is really his brainchild. I've just been helping it along. So this really has been a collaborative effort, and it wouldn't have gotten this far without his momentum, his drive, and his ability to really bring people together. So I want to give him kudos as well. But yeah, that's the end of my presentation. We're gonna keep moving along despite the challenges at the federal level and make ourselves more sustainable. And I think ultimately that's what will help us in the long term, is building up that community resilience and making sure we can bounce back. So that's my presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie.
Thank you.
Questions?
Yes.
Who do you contact to be involved into this? I mean, when Town of Wells, I didn't hear that mentioned. Is that who do you contact to get somebody to come into this?
So we have been promoting this through our regional emergency management committee primarily. And
So with Fenton? Or
yeah, so the emergency management directors have typically been the first point of contact in our towns. In some cases, that might also mean like the town manager. So like Mike and Castleton, he's the town manager, and the EMD. We had him pulled in for a bit when he was still the chair of the REMC. Bill Lovett, fire chief, very valuable resource. Peter Mantello in Castleton, Jan Samarakis in Chittenden. But we do fold it into our regional emergency management committee, which meets once a quarter, and it's a public committee. It's open to the public. Anyone can join. And the agenda, we have a dedicated slot on the agenda now to talk about where this effort is at.
but the thing is,
Sure.
people in Wells, they don't hear anything about this. So if our fire chief is Fenton, is he supposed to bring it to somebody? Does it go to the select board? Does the select board get notified about it? Because I was on the select board for 3 years. I never heard nothing about it.
Yes, well, keep in mind that this is a relatively new effort we've been trying to get up off the ground, so that's probably part of the
That's what I
reason.
mean. If we want to get more people involved in it, then you're gonna have to go to the chairman of the select board of every town.
Yes, and so we have tried to pull in people from the select board in each of these exercises, and I have done several presentations in front of several select boards to promote this idea and to invite people into the exercises. But also it's worth keeping in mind, this is step one of the larger 3-step process. So once we get to where we can build that network, we can start pulling in a lot more people who are not associated with the municipality strictly. Those people who are vulnerable populations and are supported by SEVCA or Bayada, for instance, local businesses who are critical to keeping those societal functions online during a disaster. We're hoping at that point too, we'll have a more solid base of funding to help build that infiltration into those other areas. The LAOB grant is going to be a good start for that, because quite frankly, it'll fund my ability to reach out to these groups and have these conversations where I wouldn't have been able to do that before. So it's a work in progress. It takes a little bit of time, but that is the broader goal, to pull in people beyond the municipality.
What's the same as with wells, they work well with Polly. I mean, if you're down a van, like, we had an instance and we had 2 people down, we only had three town crew guys. And one guy had hip replaced, the other had a major heart attack. So down one guy to try to plow every row of wells. So we hired a guy that worked for Polly, he come over and he helped working wells. Same as with equipment, we used to have, list of all of our equipment that we have, it's in our town report. So that if somebody, a different town needs a grade, if we have a grade, we have 3 dump trucks, we need a dump truck, it would be lower into it.
So this doesn't supersede the existing public works mutual aid agreement, for instance, or the fire mutual aid. This is something that'll fold into that. So I'm not saying that help could be strictly like within these subregions and that's it. I mean, certainly if you have like towns along Green Mountain Spine getting wrecked and then you have Polney and Wells are doing fine, then yeah, we can send people over to that. That's what we did in 23 with the first activation of the Public Works Mutual Aid Agreement. And like I mentioned, these groupings aren't perfect. There was some math that had to be done, some compromises that had to be made. There's certainly room for maybe adjusting the boundaries and yeah, like Castleton and Fairhaven were like, well, why is it Polney? And our group we work Polney all the time. Again, it's kind of hard when you're restricted to the county boundaries and you're trying to keep things balanced. It's not a perfect system, but
Is Wells coming up in your?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Are you interested in participating?
I mean, I would, but I mean, I want to talk to the select board to get them involved of what one, maybe they would want to be, I mean.
They should already be involved because I talked to them this updating the plan and I've already got Dawn or Paul locked down. I've got the final idea. Yeah, and Nora is gonna be there, the town clerk, Todd should be there. So,
Been in contact with them yet.
yeah, so with each of these exercises, we try to pull in some major players. So that's usually the emergency management director, emergency management coordinator if a town has one, someone from the select board, the chair, or just a representative. It could be a town clerk. It could be you've had fire or police join us from a few towns, maybe the highway foreman.
So I'm aware of it already, I mean,
Yes.
I haven't heard.
Yeah, no, totally understandable. We're trying to promote it through our REMC because that's a public body and that's just, that's the most direct way of doing that, but also that's why I'm giving this presentation tonight is to make folks more aware, so.
Thank you, Maggie. This is
So they were really nice slides, by the way.
Yeah. No, I will make sure Devin will send these out, and in fact, the last slide has additional resources with links to more information and background, so you can explore those on your own time too. I also have the flyer handouts showing what the co-ed is and what the general idea of it is and where you can learn more. And also the summary packets of the findings from the first 3 exercises, if anyone's interested. I've got 10 of each. So.
Great.
wonderful. Thank you, Maggie.
Thank you,
So
Maggie.
everyone knows how to get in touch with Maggie for further information, and we look forward to hearing more about this soon and hope you have great.
Think start.
Yeah.
It's a need. It's a desperate need, especially now with FEMA stepping on it. So.
Terrific. Thanks
Thank you.
again. I'm gonna move on with our agenda.
Good idea.
Still have a few things, and next on the agenda is Devin, you're up again for regional plan report.
I'm actually gonna turn this one over to Stephanie, if you're ready to take it over, Steph.
I am Devin, but I don't think I can share my screen.
Ah.
So can you pull up the landing page and that way people both online and in the room can see it and I'll kind of walk people through it?
Yeah, you folks online or in the room may not be able to see it, but I will try, and at least the folks online will see it, and everyone
Are you
else will
going
sort of
up?
get a.
You can't share. Only the people online can see.
Steph, if you share it, the people online can see it.
No one's tried sharing. No one's.
Are you
I thought
going
they-
outside of the report that was in the packet,
Exactly. The people online can see it, I believe. Right, Devin?
Stephanie? Are you going beyond what
What's-
was in the packet?
Yes.
Good.
Devin, those online can see the presentation, correct?
That's
Yeah.
right.
So if he shares something,
Or you,
it does,
you,
yeah, people can't see
No.
his.
they,
Yeah, so we
not in the
we
room.
are seeing that.
Okay. So he can.
Okay. So sit next to me.
I mean,
Mary Kate.
Don't trip. Okay, please. Thank you.
Okay, great.
I just don't need a phone.
So in the meeting packets on the last page, Devin has provided a report on where we are in the 2026 Rutland Regional Plan update process. And I can say with like the biggest smile on my face that we are coming up on the final hearing in this update process. You folks have heard from me before at critical milestones along the way. But we're here, we're at the end. Public notice for this final hearing went out April 12th through the 14th. All the select board chairs received a direct email from Devin with all of the hearing particulars. And then separate emails were sent to each community's remaining select board members, planning commission members, and other key folks, including our RPC commissioners, so that you can be informed about the upcoming final hearing on May 19th at your regular Board of Commissioners meeting in May. So what I was intending to kind of walk you through was the landing page, but if you can't show you with the landing page, it kind of takes my punchline out of the
You can show it online.
you and me both. So yeah. So I again, the final public hearing is going to be May 19th here at 7 o'clock. I guarantee you we will have the Teams system working properly for that hearing. I can guarantee. I guarantee it. Devin will be back. We'll get this all sorted out. What's wrong with the system? But essentially, we had the first public hearing on March 17th, and there was a lot of concern expressed about the regional future land use map, a lot of uncertainty surrounding the road rule and tier 3 for Act 181, which, we've already talked about a bit tonight. So really the only thing that changed after the first public hearing were adjustments to the land use categories on the regional future land use map. So there are final maps hanging in the room here in preparation for the final hearing in May. But there were no other substantive changes made to the plan itself following the public hearing. So the narrative, the storyline in the plan remains unchanged. The only thing that was buttoned up were some of the design and layout elements. There is something new that we've added to all of the information that's required as part of the hearing notice, because it's not just a meeting flyer that says here's the date, time, and place. There's all of these other parts and pieces that go along with providing ample public notice. It's a copy of the plan, links to the map, a report demonstrating how the plan conforms with state requirements. And so in addition, we've added a new frequently asked questions piece that answers some of the things we heard about Act 181 and the regional plan. So, I think it's a very informative piece to help kind of parse out, what Act 181 and its, framework and purpose, and what is the regional plan, and what's the role and impact of each. So it helps, I think, clarify and maybe untangle a bit some of the confusion and questions we heard at the first public hearing leading up to it and after. So there is a link to that on the project landing page, which is that rutlandrpc.org/plan 2026.
And there's a link for it right under the details about the final public hearing. So on that landing page, we continue to have that whole section about the final plan. The links to view in PDF format the plan or download it are available there, as well as that report that demonstrates how our plan meets all of the state planning goals and the statutory requirements for planning elements. And then we also, of course, have that same link to our engagement report that outlines the 3 phases of engagement that we went through in the region in order to prepare this update, because we didn't do it in a vacuum, right? I mean, we really had a lot of connection with each of the municipalities in our region to help inform this update. The final map section of the landing page has a link where you can view in a kind of GIS-based online map viewer format the regional plan, which is shown on the big posters in the wall. And then, because that was really the only part of the plan that changed after the first public hearing, we really tried to provide very specific information or description of how the maps changed, right? Because it's not sufficient to just say, oh, we made some changes to the land use categories. Most people want to know, okay, well, which categories, what was the driver of that change? And then, you know, Anne from Pittsburgh probably doesn't care as much about what was happening in Brandon. She maybe wants to know really what happened in Pittsburgh. So there's a general kind of regional description of the changes that were made to the map. And then in the municipal memo that each select board chair received, there's a tailored description of what were the changes that were specific in your community and what were the drivers of those changes.
Is that on the landing page as well?
Not the memos, not the municipal memos. The regional description of map changes is on the landing
No,
page.
it's not the detail.
The municipal specific one is not on the landing page. That you would get from your select board chair. And you should have probably received, Devin, wouldn't Bronson have received it as a member of the planning commission directly by email?
No, we did not.
Yeah, so he would have received it twice, once as a planning commission member and once as a regional commissioner.
Okay. So if you did not receive that, I'm sure Devin would be happy to resend it or forward what he sent
Let me check my spam before we do that.
April 14th. You should look for
April
something
14th.
from him around April 14th, right, Devin?
Oh, I have it.
That is correct. Yep.
I got the April 14th from.
Yeah, so the memo, there's on the very first page of that memo, it will give you some bullets of each of the land use categories in Clarendon. And it'll tell you kind of what was the driver of the changes, if there were any, to those land use categories that are present in your community.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So yeah, you know, the landing page then also to complement the narrative description of changes, then also provides a table that shows, you know, for each land use category in 2026 versus 2018, you know, what were the changes in acreage and the percent of regional land area from the first hearing map to this final hearing map. So you can get a sense of how things changed that way. And then we do still continue to include on the bottom of the landing page, kind of that comparison of the pre-application draft of the map. And if you recall, that's the pre-application draft that was sent to the land use review board before the first hearing. So we still kept that kind of historic information so that you can see a comparison of that pre-application draft to the final map as well, with links to the land use review board's map viewer so that you can see how our map looks in comparison with other our regional planning commissions in the state. So yeah, that wraps it up.
Good job.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Any questions for Kathy? Moving on, the next item on the agenda.
Laura, could I
Yes.
just add one piece to that?
Yep. Devin,
So just want to remind folks, it is in the letter, but statute requires 60% affirmative vote to adopt a regional plan. So just a reminder that looks like we have a great turnout tonight, and I hope we can have that same level, if not greater turnout in May, being as this is the most important voting item this commission has the responsibility to undertake. So just a reminder, and please let us know if there is an issue with attending the May meeting. Thanks.
thank you. Okay, moving on, Erica, the regional committee report, please.
There were 3 items on the regional committee. Take a look at, one Act 250, Section 248, and a petition. Because the first one took so long, the last 2 were tabled until the next one, and that was the applicant, which is basically Walmart moving up to the mall. They came asking for a letter, and the committee, after listening to their presentation, asking questions, decided and approved a letter of compliance that will be written, that basically says there's no significant impact and that their proposed building, what they want to do in their permit, is in compliance with the current regional plan. And the other 2 will be next month.
Erica, you said there is significant regional impact, correct?
No, there's no significant. There is.
The vote,
Sorry.
the vote was there is. Yep.
Yep.
And that it was conformed with the regional plan.
Right. I apologize. Can't read my own writing.
Oh, we're trying to scramble.
Already fast.
Thank you. Any questions for Erica, regional committee?
We do need a vote from the full board on that.
Oh, sorry about that. Yep. I need a motion to,
I'll motion it.
thank you. I'll second it. Second. Thank you. All in favor? Yes, motion was accepted. Thank you. Motion has passed. Moving on. I always forget to do that. Processes. Next item, we're almost wrapping up, is Executive Finance Committee report. The Executive Finance Committee met last week on Monday, April 13th. Nothing major. We just, we approved our minutes. We reviewed the financials, the executive director's report, the regional plan report, and gathered them all for tonight's agenda. That was that. And next on the agenda is Commissioners Roundtable. Does anybody want to present something? I know we're having late evening, but Larry's shaking his
No, I
head
have
like
Sunny checks. That's not.
he's do something. Okay, signing check. Anything else, or I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Devin.
Thank you.
We'll see you later.
Thank you.